Welcome, it's Andy and Wes here from D6 Evolution.
Hey, how's it going?
So today we are talking about pre-game planning, and something in particular, we've made up a pre-game planning checklist to go through. So
amazing!
I know. So anyone who's new to the channel, D6 Evolution, we're all about making you guys better 40k players. And there's loads and loads of really cool content on the channel, so be sure to check that out and subscribe if you like it. So, on with the video, buddy.
Well, excellent. So, after many conversations and a previous video that you did with Lewis, we thought we'd come up with this check sheet. It's essentially 6 steps to making you a better deployer. What more could you ask for?
So this all really came about. I did this amazing video with Lewis, and we went through everything you could physically ask your opponent. When you're setting up for a game, and everyone said, that's very, very nice and all, but we don't have an hour to ask everyone that. So it got me thinking. I was like, really, what are the most important things you need to ask your opponent when you're setting up? Because I think the key to deployment, or the first key thing to it, is knowing your enemy, and that's how this checklist starts. And guys, this checklist is available in the description below this video, so to be sure to check it out.
And on our Facebook page.
Yeah, absolutely. Plugging the Facebook page. I like it. I should do more of that.
Me too.
Yeah, I know. So we really want your feedback on the sheet. Start using it. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, that'd be great. We've tried to make it as simple as possible as well. And it's mainly the first part, the Know Your Enemy section, is really a guide to asking those questions of your opponent. And then the second half is really things that you should be thinking about when playing the game and setting up.
Yeah, so the second half's more for like a training game. So it's things you can be thinking about, but not necessarily going through in every single game. But it's to get you in the right mindset. It was really funny when I used this checklist the other day, and I thought, I've written this whole thing. I should know it all back to front. I played against Simon, and I was actually just learning loads of things about his army, and it completely changed how I was going to deploy. Yeah,
especially the first step, getting to know your enemy.
Yeah,
I ask these sort of questions every single time. I'm really bad at remembering them, and I end up asking several times throughout the game. But actually, having that written down there means I can refer to it while they're doing their game, which means I can think about it before having to ask them the question.
And it doesn't annoy the hell out of your opponent or me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So should we dive straight off? Let's go through what I think part one is the key questions you've got to ask your opponent when you're setting up, and this should be automatic after a while. You just got to know to ask your opponents these questions. So Wes, kick off.
Absolutely. So the first sort of things you need to be asking is about whether they have any deployment shenanigans, such as infiltrators, redeployments, any sort of reserves that they can have as well.
Yeah.
So those are the sort of things you need to understand about how they're going to position their army.
Yeah, absolutely. What comes next?
So next thing we look after that is threat ranges. So there's 2 parts to threat ranges. There's shooting threat ranges, and then there's assault capability threat ranges to be considering.
Yeah, so if anyone who doesn't know what a threat range is, it is essentially someone's move. For a shooting, it would be their move plus their shooting range. But it goes a little bit further than that, because people can potentially have double moves. They can advance and shoot with some weapons, so it's all just taking those things into consideration. And actually, I think that's one of the most useful things on this player guide, is that you write everything down. Just for the key units, don't write down the whole army, or do a little codex review while you're going. That's not what this is about. No. This is about going, right, you've got a knight, that's the main thing in your army. This knight has this gun, it can move this far, plus it can shoot this range. Yeah. That's its threat range.
And to identify those key threats and making sure you've got a note. And actually, you'll see on the sheet when you have a look through it, there's actually space for you to write those down there for you.
Yeah. So that's really good to do there. And the main thing you can do with this in deployment, once you know what someone's threat range for shooting and for charging, you can deploy outside of that range so that you don't get caught with a turn 1 charge or just being shot off the board, really. And
that's really the key thing to take away from this, is that once you have an understanding of what their army can do, is you can then counter deploy them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I think the next thing to talk about, we briefly covered reserves, but the other thing to know is turn 1 capabilities for Deep Strike.
Absolutely.
I know Deep Strike's a bit of a 7th edition term, but it's the ability to come in reserves turn one, and lots of armies have got this.
Yeah.
I didn't think Chaos had that many things till I spoke to Lewis the other day about the new Vigilus Ablaze book, and apparently just about everything in there could do it from what I could work out. But the classic things are the jump from the Orc Psychic Power. You've got
Genestealer Cults.
Genestealer Cults. Well, we'll see.
Pending
FAQs, they can definitely do it at the moment.
They can do it at the moment.
And anything which basically starts on the board and can redeploy, like the Slam Captains. I think it's on Wings of Fire. Their stratagems.
I think so.
Yeah, where they re-teleport, but they started on the board. So that's a really key thing. What else have we got here?
Any abilities to deny psychic powers, or understanding their psychic power capability as well. So, like the Black Templars, they've got something there as well that can shut down auras and stuff. That's if you've got an army that's reliant on psychic powers, I guess. Yeah, so there's lots of things in the game. Black Templars, I think Sisters have got it. Admech have got it as well. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just knowing, okay, they've got one stratagem, they can deny a power on a 4+, and I think one of the Chaos ones has it as well. I think Khorne has it as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Khorne.
Yeah, so there's lots of things which can do it, and just knowing that's a possibility. The other thing is obviously that goes on top of the fact that they can deny Psychers with Psychers, and Genestealer Cult, some of their units can deny psychic powers. There's lots of things. Custodies can do it. So it's just figuring out what can do it, because if your powers don't go off because you didn't realise you were in range of a deny, that's a little bit embarrassing.
Yeah.
Because we all want to look good on the tabletop, don't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the reason you try and play, isn't it?
I know.
So the other things as well too, shooting capabilities, whether they have the ability to shoot out of line of sight, whether they can advance and still shoot. Well, there's some armies like the Harlequins can do that pretty well, especially their bikes. And the ability to snipe characters, which is really key at the moment, especially in 8th edition where many buffs actually rely on characters. Understanding whether your opponent has an ability to shoot at a character is a key thing to understand as well.
Yeah, and there's quite a lot of them sneaking in the game, whether it's just an assassin, maybe it's... I think some of the Space Marines in the Vigilance books, they got an ability to shoot characters. Imperial Guard have it. So there's lots and lots of different things where you can snipe. Also remember, guys, flyers, if they've got a lot of fast-moving flyers, that counts as a sniper because they can literally come over your screens. So all that information is there so that when you deploy, you know what you're deploying against. And that's what this is all about. Final 2 points, I think, on the checklist for knowing your enemy is check their relics.
Yes.
People don't randomly choose relics. They are there for a reason.
They're generally a key part of their game plan, really, will be from the relics.
Yeah,
so you can gain a lot of information from what relics they've chosen.
Yeah, you don't want to be up against like a Talos spam list and go, what does the Vexator Mask do again? Oh, it means I just die, right, okay. Wish I knew that before the game.
And stratagems as well. That's another thing we need to consider, especially if they've got something like Vex or the new Genestealer Cult on, which allows them to essentially cancel your stratagems as well. Always good to know. Yeah, that's good. And the final prompt we have on here as well is agree terrain. It's really important before you start the game to agree what terrain means to you two, so that you don't get caught out halfway during the game and have that awkward conversation. Yeah, because I think I know what terrain is, and you think you know what terrain is, but it may be completely different. It's a 20-second conversation that just needs to be had at the start. Which stops a 20-minute argument later on. But the common things are your models meant to be counting terrain if they're next to terrain, or whether they're in terrain, or in the case of Dan Bates from Glasshammer Gaming, whether they're just looking at terrain. Yeah, absolutely. And some of the line of sight things as well. So like ITC generally have that the first floor you can't see through as well. So just understanding what gamescape you're playing on is really, really helpful. Good. So I mean that sounded like a lot there, but actually when I did this the other day, it took me just over 2 minutes to quickly smash through this, because most of them are yes or no questions, like do you have infiltrators? No. Have you got redeploy? No. And you just bang through them all. About a minute spent on their actual ranges of things, and that's it. So that's the key thing for knowing your enemy. And on the back of the sheet, you're going to find there's some things to think about for general tactics for the game. Do you want to quickly run us through that? We're not going to cover everything on here because, like I say, if you want to know everything about the concept of sort of pre-game planning, we've already done a video on that. If you look at it, it's I think it's like something cheesy like pre-game planning to win. Something nice and catchy. You like your cheesy titles, don't you? I do. It's a bit of clickbait. And Wes has become really famous. You've been on the
Splinter Mind podcast.
Splinter Mind podcast. Yes, we actually ran through this in quite a bit of depth as well. So if you take a moment, listen to Splinter Mind podcast. It's mainly
3 hours.
it's Eldari, mainly Drakari based podcast, and well worth a listen. Those guys are great over there. So please do visit the Splinter Mind podcast.
Yeah. How's it feel to be, on a really famous podcast and then have to come back to our channel?
Well, those guys are big deals.
I know they are, aren't they?
You're just Andy from D6.
I know.
You've got a story about that. You'll probably share for another time.
Yeah.
Excellent. Anyway, let's continue this. Let's not make this a 20-minute video for the guys.
Yeah.
So playing through the rest of the steps. Step 2, we can ask you to really consider to play the mission.
Yes, playing the mission. Take a moment to not only just read the mission but then it's deciding how you are going to win this. And this is something I didn't really get my head around until...
This is a very new concept for you, isn't it, Andy?
I was all about, I've got my
face.
fire raptor, then I have my other fire raptor, then I just shoot everything and it would die. But since they I don't know why they nerfed the fire raptors.
I know, you still cry about that.
I do. I'm still salty about that. But ever since then, I've had to play the mission, and it actually came about when I was playing against Simon's Knights, and I was playing my custodians, and I would always lose. And then I thought about the only thing I need to do is score points. It doesn't matter if he kills me.
No.
And it's just getting your head away from killing stuff to actually sitting down and go, right, how do I win this? Is it by controlling the board? Is it just being surviving to the end? And figuring out what your army's good at versus what their army's good at.
Playing the mission marks you out as a more experienced general rather than just coming up to the table and just trying to smash face.
Yeah, because that doesn't win. That doesn't win you games. I've won loads of games with just like 1 or 2 models left on the table.
Yeah.
And it feels really good doing that as well.
Yes, it does.
It does. Very, realistically, you've lost the game, but you've smashed them on points, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's all that matters.
So next thing to really consider after that is make a plan. So once you've understood your army, you've understood their army, you understand what the mission is, come up with a plan about how you're going to play the game.
A plan to win. That would be a great name for more. No way, I used that already.
Yeah.
What sort of things are you thinking about there?
So thinking about target priorities, probably one of the first things we've put down here to consider. Is there something you really need to kill on turn 1? Or is there something that you really need to survive on turn 1 as well? So thinking about where your screen's going to be, do you really need them on turn 1?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Some of those key things.
I think it's also important at this point. There's 2 things. It's like, how does your opponent score points? If it's just like troops score points, just kill his troops.
Yes.
It's done. It doesn't have to be the biggest, scariest thing on the board you need to kill. It has to be the thing that they're going to score points with.
Yeah.
You've got to balance that out. You've still got to have an army to score points yourself. So there's a little bit of a balance.
Like there's the mission in the new chapter prove that troops score.
Yeah.
In that case, that loyal 32 is going to be my first target priority because it means once they're dead, they can't score those objectives.
No, they can't. The other thing to say in there is do a little bit of Math Hammer before games, or there's an awesome app called Fields of Blood where you can actually Math Hammer out roughly what units do what damage to what things. I'll put a link to this in the description below because it is an invaluable resource. But don't try and kill unkillable things. Just don't do it.
Understanding the damage potential of your army is huge, actually.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just sit there rolling through dice and just simulating my units attacking other types of units, just get a feel for what they do.
Yeah.
Andy goes to the more scientific route of actually using the Math Hammer for it. I prefer rolling dice, but those both options are available for you.
I think the other thing, particularly with rolling dice, is you actually kind of realise, like, yes, that's the average dice roll you'll get if you type it into the Math Hammer thing, but actually there's a lot of variability. You may do a third of that damage, or you may do 3 times that damage. And the thing to think about when can you kill it? Yes, I may be able to kill it. What happens if I don't kill it? Will I lose the game?
Yeah.
You've got to come up with contingencies if you don't do what you expect to do.
Absolutely. So next thing to consider is so thinking about what the opponent is most likely to do during their game. And a lot of this comes from understanding part 1 of knowing your enemy. That breeds into understanding what the army is likely to do. Are they an alpha strike army? Are they a close combat orientated army? Are they a gunline army? And how that feeds into your play style then, and how you're going to counter them.
Yeah, most armies have a pretty obvious style to them, don't they?
Yeah. Well, just generic factions have a flavour of them.
They do.
You can get an understanding from that, and then when you dig into what their army list is a bit more, you can get a better flavour for what they're likely to do during the game, and more importantly, what their win condition is, how they are going to win the game, and thinking about how you're going to counter that.
And how are they going to counter you? Because not every army plays exactly the same in every game.
Yeah.
Like my custodies, I'd start them on the board, I'd ride them up, into glory. That's great. But against knights, where I'll just get shot off the table, I'll put them in deep strike and come in later on.
Yeah.
So there's different ways of playing different armies, and just realising what your opponent's going to likely do against you. Some of that comes with experience, but some of it just goes to just thinking, if you were your opponent, what would you do against your army?
Absolutely. So next thing to consider after that is objective placement. This is going by the wayside a little bit as more missions actually have fixed objectives, but there's still many missions where you get to place your own objectives, and there are key strategies that you can use when actually going to place those.
Yeah, do you want to run us through a few of those? Just sort of general army archetypes. What sort of things would you come up with?
Yeah, so generally, if you've got like a close combat orientated army, you're going to want those together, probably in the mid-table, because that's where you're going to be doing most of your fighting.
Yeah.
If you've got a fast army, hey, make the most of that speed, have those bad boys spread out across the table. If you've got a very slow army, conversely to that, you probably want them a bit closer together. Yeah. If you've got a gunline army, hey, you're going to want them a little bit further back towards your board edge.
Yeah.
And understanding that as well, what your type of army your opponent has, means that you can counterplace those objectives to make it more of a negative benefit to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing to think about is there's a lot of movement restriction in the game now. So the classic one is Imperial Knights. Now, there's a lot of places on the board they just cannot get to because they can't. It's very hard for them to move over ruins. They can't move through walls. There's lots of places they can't go. So if you can find places on the board where they just physically can't score objectives, so it's just a win. Yeah. Placing things out of line of sight. And also, where the objectives are is where your opponent's going to have to be. So if he relies of hiding out of line of sight with his Dark Reapers, put the objectives in the open. Put them near a ruin so that he can't put one in a ruin.
That's generally the first thing I do. The first objective I place is I go, where does this guy really want to put their objective down?
Yeah.
And put my objective so it blocks.
Yeah, because it's a 12-inch, yeah.
Of where they want to put theirs down.
And you can just see him just go,
absolutely. That's the first one I always place.
And it's okay to slightly disadvantage yourself if you're going to massively disadvantage your opponent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the final step we go through is actually the deployment setup and thinking about what you need to do to achieve a good deployment.
Yeah. So the first thing I think about is, do you need first turn?
Yeah, that's a big one.
What's your thoughts for deciding?
It depends upon what I'm going against. Generally speaking, with a lot of bottom turn objectives now, actually going second is more advantageous.
Yeah.
But if I know that actually he's got a greater firepower output than me, then maybe I might want to put the hurt on them first to get that initiative. But generally speaking, my go-to default now is second of that.
Yeah.
Second.
It's like, if second's better for the mission, play second, unless you can't get around their Alpha Strike.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. And whether you want your reserves to come in before their reserves. Like, if you want to shoot their reserves, sometimes it's better to come in after them, so they can't Alpha Strike your reserves, or Beta Strike. I wonder which one it is.
Yeah, and other considerations as well is the screens. We've spoken about quite a bit recently, about choosing when and where to deploy your screen. Most times, there's only a few people that can actually deploy in turn one for redeployments. So actually having
you're talking about deep strikes.
Deep strikes, yeah. So reinforcements on taking them down turn one. So actually, most of the time, you want your screen hidden for that initial turn, but then in position for the start of turn 2 or 3 onwards, whenever you think the opponent going to bring their enemy down.
Yeah, no, that's just really important, because a lot of people just throw away their screen. They're like, right, guardsmen, they're on the line, they're out in the open. I've zoned off your deep strike, even though you can't deep strike turn 1. It's just completely pointless. So just don't do it. Have them out of line of sight, behind cover, and then move them up there. 20 plus inches. These stupid guys would go faster than jet bikes.
I have this image of these custodian jet bikes going all out, and all of a sudden these guardsmen just trundling past them really fast. They've rolled a 1, and they're still going faster than the custodian's jet bikes.
But just understanding they have that movement, so you don't need have your screen out of their range, out of their line of sight, and then you just move them up. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's it. Anything else on my awesome little sheet there?
There are several more things, but to be honest, I don't think we necessarily need to go into that much detail now. The thing we say is, have a look through a sheet, The second side is more for you on your training games.
Yeah.
But there's nothing stopping you using this as a bit of a prompt during your actual tournament game. So, but highly recommend going through the Know Your Enemy section every game that you play, because it will bring in that those key things you'll want to know during the game.
Yeah. Well, we want your feedback on this. Let us know. Use it for a couple of games. Let us know if you like it. Is there a key question you'd want to know about your opponent's army that we have not put on this list? Let us know. And this is going to be the first in quite a long series of videos on deployment and screening, which I've got planned. So that's going to be quite exciting stuff. I've got some really cool ideas for that.
Yeah, we've been tinkering those already, so it's going to be a good show.
Right, guys. Until the next video. See ya.
Bye-bye.